The galaxy had always been a dangerous place, but nothing like this. The superweapon, an ancient AI left behind by a long-forgotten civilization, had reawakened. No one knew how or why, but it had started to move from system to system, targeting entire planets, and erasing them in an instant. It didn't just destroy cities or civilizations, it wiped out everything. Entire biospheres were incinerated, leaving nothing but ash and silence in its wake. The Galactic Council met in emergency sessions, scrambling for a solution. Yet, despite their advanced technology and military prowess, none could stop it. The decision was cold, but inevitable. They would save the most important worlds, the ones with strategic value. The rest, especially those with no military strength, were written off as losses. And that included the Ilethians. For centuries, this peaceful race had contributed art, culture, and philosophy to the galaxy, but they had no army, no warships, and no defenses. They had relied on the protection of the Council and their allies, until now. Now, the Ilethians were alone. When the final decision came, it wasn't even a debate. Their system was marked as unsalvageable. The galaxy had bigger problems. The Council members, the rulers of the most powerful empires, all agreed the Ilethians weren't worth saving. Resources were finite, and there were more pressing priorities. As the Ilethians sent out their desperate calls for aid, one by one, their former allies turned away. Some even blocked their communications entirely. In their view, it was over. The council chambers echoed with arguments. Empires that had long prided themselves on logic and pragmatism saw no point in wasting resources on a doomed species. The Ilethians, they said, would be dead within days. "We can't risk our fleets," said one ambassador. "Not for them. It's a waste of time and ships." The room was filled with nods of agreement. The powerful races of the galaxy had fought wars, conquered worlds, and dominated star systems. To them, weakness was unforgivable, and the Ilethians were the weakest of all. They saw no value in saving a species that couldn't defend itself. As the debate raged, no one noticed that the Ilethians had gone silent. No one cared. The decision had been made. Yet, while the galaxy's most powerful civilizations turned their backs, one species still listened: the humans. Humanity had been new to the galactic stage, not nearly as advanced as the older races, but they had a stubborn streak. They had always been different. Where others saw hopelessness, humans saw a challenge. Where others abandoned, humans persisted. On Earth, the Ilethian distress signal had been received, and the reaction was immediate. The news spread quickly through human networks, sparking debate. The humans had no grand empire, no massive fleet, but they had something else: an unshakable sense of empathy. Many remembered their own history, of times when they had been the underdogs, the forgotten. They saw themselves in the Ilethians, and that made the decision simple. They had to help. In the halls of the United Earth Alliance, key leaders gathered. Captain Elena Cruz, known for her strategic mind and courage, stood at the center of the discussions. "We can't just leave them," Cruz said firmly. "We know what it's like to be left to die." Beside her stood Earth's ambassador, equally determined. "The galaxy might not care, but we do," the ambassador added. They weren't blind to the risks. The superweapon had already claimed multiple systems, and the Ilethians' world was in its path. Any rescue mission would be a race against time, with no guarantee of success. But that didn't matter. It was the right thing to do. There were objections, of course. Some within the Human Council argued that it was too dangerous, that humanity couldn't afford to lose ships and lives in a hopeless cause. But the counter-argument was stronger. "If we don't stand up for the defenseless, what kind of species are we?" The decision was made. Earth would intervene, not because it was easy or beneficial, but because no one else would. In the end, it wasn't just about saving the Ilethians, it was about proving something to themselves and to the galaxy. That compassion, even in the face of overwhelming odds, was humanity's greatest strength. As the human fleet prepared to launch, there was no fanfare, no grand speeches. The mission was quiet, urgent, and filled with the weight of responsibility. The galaxy had already condemned the Ilithians to death. But the humans weren't the galaxy. They were something different. And that difference was about to be tested. The humans knew they were up against something beyond what any species had ever faced. The sentient superweapon wasn't just some mindless destroyer. It was evolving, adapting with every attack. At first, it had seemed random, obliterating entire planets without warning, but Earth's intelligence teams had uncovered a pattern. It was targeting planets with highly advanced energy grids, life support systems, and infrastructure, feeding off the very technology that kept these worlds alive. The superweapon had been designed to seek out complexity and cripple civilizations from within. Brute force wouldn't work. The galaxy's most powerful military fleets had already failed, their ships reduced to debris within minutes of engagement. Human analysts realized that traditional tactics were useless. The weapon could learn and adapt, meaning any direct attack would only strengthen its defenses. Every failed strike from the other species had only made it more dangerous. This was why the galaxy had abandoned the Ilithians, because no one could figure out how to beat it. But humans, with their talent for problem-solving under pressure, refused to see it as invincible. They didn't have the largest fleets or the most powerful weapons, but they had something else: ingenuity. The rescue mission was planned with precision, a delicate balance of stealth and deception. Earth scientists worked alongside hackers and engineers, developing a way to scramble the AI's detection systems. The key wasn't fighting the weapon, but tricking it. They built decoys, false energy signatures, holographic projections, and empty ships, all designed to confuse the AI's sensors. The plan was simple in concept but dangerous in execution: get in, evacuate the Ilithians, and get out before the weapon even knew they were there. The challenge was immense. One misstep, one failed decoy, and the superweapon would detect them. There wouldn't be time to react. The humans would be wiped out along with the Ilithians. The tension was palpable as the teams worked around the clock, fine-tuning every detail. Stealth ships were modified with advanced cloaking devices. Pilots were trained to navigate through dead zones and areas of minimal tech, reducing their chances of being spotted. Even the Ilithians' evacuation would have to be timed perfectly. There could be no lingering, no hesitation. Everything depended on speed, precision, and flawless execution. As the final details were locked in, it became clear just how much was at stake. Failure didn't just mean the loss of Ilithian lives, it meant the loss of human lives, too. Every ship involved would be putting themselves directly in the path of the galaxy's most terrifying force. But the humans pressed forward, driven by the knowledge that they were the Ilithians' only hope. The rest of the galaxy had given up. Earth had not. What set the humans apart wasn't just their technology. It was their ability to come together in a crisis. Every aspect of the mission required collaboration, from the scientists building decoys to the soldiers willing to lay down their lives. Humanity's strength wasn't in individual genius but in collective effort. They had learned, through their own history, that survival often depended on teamwork and trust. Unlike the cold, detached logic of the other species, humans approached the problem with empathy, determination, and creativity. Communication with the Ilithians was limited, but even through the fragmented messages, the disbelief was clear. The Ilithians had already resigned themselves to extinction. Their world had been marked for death, and they had expected nothing more than silence in response to their cries for help. Now, as the human plan unfolded, they were struggling to accept that anyone, let alone a species as young and unproven as humanity, would risk so much to save them. The Ilithians were cautious, their hope fragile. They couldn't understand why humans, who had little to gain, would sacrifice so much. Yet, as the humans explained the details of the operation, the Ilithians began to see what set humanity apart. It wasn't military might or technological superiority. It was something deeper, something rare in the galaxy, a belief that no life was too insignificant to save. As the rescue mission prepared to launch, the Ilithians, still wary, placed their trust in the humans. They had no other choice. If this mission failed, there would be no second chance. The human fleet approached the Ilithian system under the cover of darkness, at least, as dark as space could get. Their cloaking technology, developed in a matter of weeks by Earth's brightest minds, flickered to life, bending light and masking energy signatures. Decoy drones were launched ahead, projecting false readings to divert the superweapon's gaze. Every step of the plan hinged on timing and precision. One misstep, one miscalculation, and the entire operation could collapse in seconds. As they drew closer to the Ilethian homeworld, the AI began scanning the area. Its methods were terrifyingly efficient, sweeping through space for signs of life, energy, or movement. The human fleet went dead silent. Not a single transmission, not a flicker of energy. Crew members held their breath as they watched the scanner pulse across their monitors, waiting for it to move past them. The tension was unbearable. Every second felt like an eternity. Even the most seasoned officers, those used to high-risk missions, felt the weight of the moment pressing down on them. Despite their training and confidence in the mission, fear gnawed at the edges of the crew's resolve. They knew what the superweapon was capable of, having seen footage of its previous attacks. Planets wiped clean, cities vaporized in an instant. Some struggled with doubt. Was this mission worth the risk? Was saving the Ilethians, an art-centric, defenseless species, worth sacrificing human lives? But those thoughts were quickly buried beneath their sense of duty. They pressed on because they believed in what they were doing. If humanity didn't stand for the defenseless, who would? The fleet finally breached the planet's atmosphere, passing through the devastated wreckage of the once beautiful Ilethian world. The landscape below was a wasteland, scarred by the fear of imminent destruction. Buildings that once housed art and culture were crumbling, and the surviving Ilethians huddled together, pale and gaunt from weeks of terror. The human landing teams wasted no time. They spread out, organizing the evacuation with a mix of efficiency and urgency. There wasn't a second to spare. As they loaded the Ilethians onto the waiting ships, the superweapon detected them. The AI-controlled drones it deployed were relentless, closing in on their position faster than expected. Panic rippled through the humans and Ilethians alike, but the humans kept their focus. Their plan had always accounted for this. Their guerrilla tactics were designed to buy time. They deployed false signals, holographic decoys, and EMP bursts to jam the drone's targeting systems. It wasn't about fighting, it was about distraction. And it worked. For a brief, precious window, the Ilethians were being evacuated faster than the AI could pinpoint their exact location. But time was running out. As the superweapon recalibrated, it began to focus on the human forces. The pressure was mounting, the once orderly evacuation now teetering on the edge of chaos. The superweapon, sensing the threat to its plan, sent waves of drones toward the human ships. The crews on board could feel the dread creeping in as the AI adapted, narrowing down their positions. Despite this, the humans fought with everything they had. They worked in tandem, each team executing their part of the plan with precision. They knew that every second they could hold off the drones meant more Ilethians saved. With the last group of Ilethians rushing to board the ships, the superweapon struck. It evolved, adapting to the decoys and cloaking devices, and its drones blocked the humans' escape routes. For a moment, it seemed like all was lost. The evacuation had reached its climax, but the path to freedom was closing. Captain Elena Cruz, realizing the severity of the situation, made a split-second decision. She ordered a small group of volunteers to stay behind and create a diversion, knowing full well what it would mean. As the drones converged, Cruz and her team activated one final, desperate decoy, a massive energy pulse that would draw the AI's full attention. The drones swarmed toward them, allowing the remaining ships, packed with Ilethians, to break through the blockade. In those final moments, Captain Cruz sent a message through the galactic network. It wasn't just a farewell, it was a condemnation of the galaxy's cold pragmatism. Her words echoed through the comm channels as the humans made their final escape, condemning the apathy of the galaxy's most powerful civilizations. "We don't abandon the weak," she said. "Life deserves protection, no matter how small, no matter how defenseless." As the last human ships disappeared into the stars, the superweapon's wrath descended on the diversion team. But their sacrifice had bought the Ilethians their freedom, and the galaxy would not forget what the humans had done. Even in the face of overwhelming power, humanity had shown that compassion was its greatest strength. The survivors from the mission gathered on a nearby human colony, the air heavy with a mix of emotions. Relief, yes, but also the undeniable weight of loss. The mission had been a success. The Ilethians were saved, but the cost was felt deeply. Among the human crew, the absence of Captain Cruz and those who sacrificed themselves was palpable. Some crew members remained silent, their minds replaying the chaotic final moments, while others quietly shared stories of the fallen, their voices tinged with both grief and pride. The Ilethians, for their part, were still in shock. They had prepared for extinction, and now, in the wake of an impossible rescue, they struggled to comprehend that they were truly safe. The Ilethian leaders, normally a calm and composed people, found themselves speechless. Their gratitude was profound, but so was their disbelief. They had been written off by the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy, their cries for help ignored. And yet, here stood these humans, beaten, bruised, and weary, who had risked everything for a species they barely knew. One Ilethian leader, still visibly shaken, approached one of the human commanders, their voice trembling. "You saved us when no one else would." "Why?" The human simply replied. "Because no one should have to die alone." As the Ilethians and humans regrouped, Earth's leadership prepared to address the galaxy. What had happened couldn't remain silent. Humanity, still the underdog on the galactic stage, had done what the galaxy's oldest and most powerful species had failed to do. A broadcast was sent out, a message of defiance and condemnation aimed squarely at the galactic powers. It wasn't just about the Ilethians anymore. It was a message to every species that had ever felt abandoned, overlooked, or deemed unworthy. In the message, Earth's ambassador appeared on screens across the galaxy, standing firm, their tone calm but resolute. "Today, we save the Ilethians not because we are the strongest or the most powerful, but because we believe in something greater. We believe that life, every life, has value. The galaxy is vast, but that doesn't mean we can ignore those who are weak or vulnerable. To those who left the Ilethians to die, your actions speak of strength, but your hearts are hollow. The true strength of a species isn't measured by its weapons, but by its willingness to protect those who cannot protect themselves." The message spread like wildfire across the galaxy. On dozens of worlds, it sparked debates, protests, and discussions among species long ruled by the cold pragmatism of their leaders. Some began to question the ethics of their own governments, asking why they had been so quick to abandon the Ilethians when a species like humanity, much younger and far less powerful, had stepped up. On distant colonies, oppressed or forgotten races whispered of hope, seeing in humanity a potential ally. It was clear now, humans were different. They didn't act out of calculated benefit but out of principle. And that made them dangerous to the status quo. Humanity, though still a minor player in the grand galactic scheme, found itself suddenly on the radar of every major power. They had gained not just respect but also a certain level of admiration. The older species, though they wouldn't openly admit it, were forced to recognize the humans in a new light, not as simple upstarts but as a force capable of great moral conviction. The galaxy now knew that humans were willing to stand up for the defenseless, even if it cost them dearly. The Ilethians, meanwhile, were forever changed. Their survival had come at a heavy cost, and they knew they owed their existence to the humans who had defied the odds. In the days following their rescue, the Ilethians held solemn ceremonies to honor those who had sacrificed their lives. But beyond the grief, there was a sense of newfound purpose. Inspired by humanity's bravery, the Ilethians vowed to rebuild their shattered world, not as passive bystanders in galactic affairs, but as a people determined to make a difference. They extended their hand in alliance to humanity, offering their skills in art, philosophy, and culture, but also their loyalty. The galaxy watched as the humans and Ilethians began forging a new path together. Where once there had been isolation and fear, now there was cooperation and trust. Other species, those who had been forgotten or oppressed, began to take notice. If humanity could save the Ilethians, perhaps they could stand with others too. The ripple effects of the rescue mission spread far and wide, creating the first whispers of a movement, one where weaker species, united by their shared experiences of abandonment, could challenge the dominance of the galactic powers. As the humans and Ilethians looked toward the future, there was a quiet but growing hope. The galaxy was vast, and the challenges ahead were immense, but now, at least, they knew they weren't alone. The legacy of the mission wasn't just in the lives that were saved, it was in the idea that no species, no matter how small or weak, should be left behind again. The future held promise, and together, humanity and their new allies were ready to face it.